but the silence was not peaceful. Smoke still rose from burning machines, and the ground was broken with craters. Pieces of steel and broken weapons were scattered everywhere, shining under the weak light of a fading sun. The air smelled of ash and blood, heavy and choking, as if the world itself was tired of war. In the middle of this ruined land lay a figure, half hidden under dust and broken armor. It was an alien warrior, once feared, once respected. His armor, painted with the proud colors of his clan, was torn and cracked. His chest still rose and fell, but his body no longer obeyed him. The explosion had taken his legs, and he could not move them. His arms shook when he tried to crawl forward, and each attempt only pushed his face deeper into the dirt. The warrior's eyes were filled with rage and shame. He had led many battles before. His people had sung songs of his victories. But now, lying broken on the battlefield, he was no longer their hero. He was only a burden, a weak body that could not fight. Around him, his comrades had gathered. At first, their faces showed shock and pity. But soon, their pity turned into cold silence. One by one, they stepped back. Some shook their heads. Others muttered that the warrior's time was over. A few even whispered that leaving him was the only way to survive. Their voices were low, but the warrior heard every word. "You cannot carry him. He will slow us down," one soldier said, his voice sharp. "He is finished. The enemies will find him, and we cannot risk our lives for a broken body," another added. Even the leader of the group, who had once called the paralyzed warrior his brother, looked away. His jaw was tight, his eyes refusing to meet the warrior's. "Forgive me," he whispered, but his steps moved backward like the others. The alien warrior reached out his hand, his fingers trembling. His eyes begged for them to stay, to remember the times he had saved them, to remember the battles he had fought for them. But no hand reached back. One by one, his comrades turned and disappeared into the smoke. The silence returned, heavier than before. The warrior lay there, his chest rising and falling with short, painful breaths. The sound of his own heart was loud in his ears. He had never felt so small, so unwanted. He tried to shout, but his voice was weak and cracked. His cry was swallowed by the emptiness around him. Minutes passed, maybe hours. The warrior did not know. Time had no meaning in the dust and ruin. Only the shadows moved, stretching longer as the sun sank lower. He thought about his past victories. He thought about the moments when his people had cheered his name, when young soldiers had looked at him with admiration. He thought about the promises of loyalty, the vows that no warrior would ever be left behind. And then he thought about the footsteps walking away, leaving him alone in the dirt like forgotten trash. Despair crawled into his heart, colder than any wound. His pride was broken. His spirit felt empty. For the first time, he wanted the war to end. Not with victory, not with honor, but with silence. Maybe if he closed his eyes and did not open them again, the shame would vanish with him. But fate was not finished with him yet. Somewhere in the distance, heavy footsteps echoed against the broken ground. They were not the careful steps of his comrades. They were not the sharp march of enemy soldiers. These steps were steady, strong, and deliberate, as if someone was moving toward him with purpose. The warrior's weak eyes tried to focus through the smoke. A figure appeared, walking slowly through the ruins, carrying a rifle across his back. It was not one of his own kind. The outline was smaller, the armor different, the shape unmistakable. It was a human soldier. The warrior's heart beat faster. Humans were outsiders here, strangers in this war. They were not trusted by his people. Some even saw them as less than allies, more like shadows on the edge of the battlefield. Why would a human walk here, through danger, when even his own brothers had abandoned him? The human stopped a few steps away. His face was covered with dust, his uniform torn, but his eyes were calm and steady. He looked down at the paralyzed alien warrior, not with disgust, not with pity, but with something different, something the alien could not yet name. The silence stretched between them. The alien warrior waited for the human to turn and leave like the others. That was what everyone did. That was what he expected. But the human did not move away. He stood there, firm, as if deciding something that would change both their lives. The alien warrior felt his breath catch. Suspense filled the air like a storm about to break. Would this human, this outsider, step forward when no one else had? Or would he turn away and let the shadows of betrayal close in forever? The human soldier stood still for a moment, his eyes scanning the broken field before settling on the wounded alien warrior, who lay motionless on the ground. The smoke around them shifted with the wind, carrying with it the smell of burning oil and scorched earth. His boots pressed into the cracked soil as he moved closer, each step echoing like a choice he could not undo. His hands were rough from years of combat, his uniform torn at the shoulders, yet there was something steady in the way he carried himself. He did not move with fear or hesitation, but with quiet determination, as though he had already made his decision before he reached this place. The alien warrior looked up at him, his sharp features lined with both pain and disbelief. His people had left him, the comrades he once called brothers had abandoned him without looking back, and now, of all beings, it was a human who stood over him. His mind could not understand it. Humans were seen as weaker by many alien races, too fragile to endure the wars that shook the stars. His kind had often laughed at their small size, their short lifespans, and their lack of advanced gifts. Yet this human did not carry himself like a weak creature. He stood there, covered in dirt and blood, but his eyes were firm and unbroken, like a blade that refused to bend. The soldier crouched down, placing one knee on the ground beside the paralyzed warrior. For a moment he did not speak. Instead, he studied the alien's face, the broken armor, and the still legs. Then, in a voice that was calm but heavy with meaning, he asked, "Do you want to live?" The alien warrior was stunned by the question. No one had asked him that. His own people had not cared. They had only spoken about survival, about leaving him behind so they could escape. But this human, a stranger, was offering him a choice. His pride pushed him to turn away, to say no, to die with whatever honor he thought remained. Yet something in the soldier's voice held him. It was not pity. It was not false kindness. It was the voice of someone who understood pain, who understood being left alone, and who refused to let another suffer that fate. The warrior's throat was dry, his voice weak, but he forced out the words, Why would you care? You are not my brother. You are not my people." The soldier looked straight into his eyes. "Because no warrior deserves to be left in the dirt. Not you. Not anyone." The silence that followed was heavy, but it was different from the silence of abandonment. This silence carried weight, as if the universe itself paused to see what choice the alien would make. For the first time since the explosion, the warrior felt a spark deep inside, a spark that told him his story was not finished yet. The human reached into a small canteen strapped to his side and pressed it to the alien's lips. The water was warm and metallic, but to the paralyzed warrior it tasted like life itself. Drops spilled down his chin as he drank slowly, his body trembling with each swallow. When he had enough, the human closed the canteen and placed it back at his side. Then, without waiting for thanks, he slid his arms under the alien's body, locking his hands behind his back. The alien gasped as he was lifted. His body was heavy, dead weight below the waist, and the human's muscles strained under the burden. Yet the soldier did not falter. His boots dug deeper into the dirt as he pushed himself upright, the paralyzed warrior held across his shoulders. Step by step, he turned away from the ruin and began walking toward the distant horizon. The alien's mind raced with disbelief. His own people had walked away without hesitation, and yet this human, who had no bond to him, no obligation, was carrying him into danger. His pride screamed at him to resist, to tell the soldier to leave him, but his heart could not speak those words. Instead, he asked softly, almost to himself, "Why risk your life for me?" The soldier adjusted his grip but did not slow down. "Because someone has to." The answer was simple, yet it carried more power than any speech of loyalty or oath of honor he had ever heard from his own kind. It was not about glory, not about victory. It was about something deeper, something the alien had forgotten after years of war, humanity's stubborn refusal to let go of another life, even when the cost was heavy. As they moved through the broken ground, the alien warrior began to notice details he had ignored before. The human's back was scarred, the marks of old battles etched into his skin. His armor was patched with pieces from different fights, proof of years of survival. This was not a soldier chasing fame or recognition. This was a man who had known suffering and yet chose to keep moving forward. In that moment, the alien realized that the human strength was not in his size or his weapons. It was in his heart, in the fire that would not burn out. The battlefield was still dangerous. Enemy drones buzzed in the distance, scanning for movement. Broken structures creaked, ready to collapse at the smallest touch. The journey ahead would be long, and both of them knew it. But for the first time since the explosion, the alien warrior did not feel abandoned. He felt the weight of a soldier who had chosen to stand beside him, not because of duty, not because of blood, but because it was the right thing to do. As the human carried him into the smoke, the alien's mind replayed the faces of his comrades turning away. He felt bitterness, yes, but also something else. He felt a strange new respect, not for his own kind, but for the human who had refused to let him die alone. And in that respect, a bond began to form, a bond that would carry them both into battles yet to come. The suspense grew with every step, because the warrior did not know if the human's choice would lead to survival or death. But he knew one thing: he was no longer alone in the dirt. The human soldier pressed forward, each step heavy under the weight of the paralyzed alien warrior draped across his shoulders. The ground was broken, filled with jagged metal and scattered bones. Yet he did not pause. His boots sank into the dust, leaving deep prints behind, as though marking the proof of his resolve with every step. The alien could feel the strain in the soldier's muscles, the way his chest heaved with the effort of carrying such a heavy load. Still, the soldier walked on, never looking back, never giving even a single sign of hesitation. Around them, the battlefield was alive with hidden dangers. Enemy patrols moved through the ruins, their searchlights cutting across the smoke. Small drones hovered above, their red eyes scanning the ground for any trace of survivors. The ruins of ships and armored vehicles made shadows that stretched long and thin, like the fingers of the dead reaching out from the past. The silence between explosions was almost worse than the blasts themselves, because at any moment it could be broken by the shriek of enemy fire. The soldiers' ears were sharp, always turning to catch the faint hum of machines or the crunch of footsteps in the dirt. The alien, lying across his back, could sense how focused he was, how his body was always ready to shift, to drop, to fight, to protect. At one point, the whirring of engines grew louder, and the soldier quickly dropped to one knee, sliding into the shelter of a collapsed wall. He set the alien down carefully against the broken stone and pressed a finger to his lips, signaling for silence. The paralyzed warrior held his breath as 3 enemy drones drifted past, their red sensors glowing like eyes of fire. The soldier pulled his rifle into his hands, his finger steady on the trigger, but he did not fire. He waited, holding himself completely still, his breath controlled, until the machines drifted away and the hum faded into the distance. Only then did he sling the weapon back and lift the alien again, his arms shaking but his grip firm. The alien felt a strange mixture of frustration and awe. Frustration that he, once a mighty warrior, was reduced to being carried like a broken relic, but awe that this human, smaller and fragile compared to many species, carried him with a strength born not from power alone but from will. As they moved deeper into the ruins, the alien's bitterness spilled out in a hoarse whisper. "You should leave me. I will slow you down. If they catch us, you will die because of me. It is madness to carry a useless body." His voice trembled with anger, but beneath it was shame. The soldier adjusted his grip and kept moving, his face calm even as sweat rolled down his skin. "You are not useless," he said quietly. "You are still a warrior. You are still alive. And as long as you are alive, you matter." The alien turned his face away, unable to reply. The words burned into him, not because they were cruel, but because they were kinder than anything he had heard since the explosion. His own people had called him a burden. This human, a stranger, called him a warrior still. The road ahead grew more dangerous. They reached the shattered remains of a great structure, a fortress that had collapsed under heavy fire. Steel beams jutted out like broken bones, and fires still smoldered in the cracks. The soldier climbed carefully, his body trembling as he balanced the alien across his shoulders, while pulling himself up with one free hand. Rocks and metal clattered beneath his boots, threatening to reveal their position. Once, a sharp beam broke under his weight, sending both of them crashing down several feet. Dust filled the air, and the alien coughed painfully, but the human rose again, blood dripping from a cut on his forehead. He wiped it away with the back of his hand and continued without complaint. As the night deepened, the dangers multiplied. Enemy scouts moved closer, their voices harsh in an alien tongue as they searched the ruins. Twice, the soldier was forced to hide the paralyzed warrior beneath sheets of broken metal, pressing himself against the ground beside him, holding his breath as the patrols passed. The alien could feel the human's heart pounding against his arm, steady but strong, like a drum of defiance. Even in silence, even in fear, the soldier's courage did not fade. Hours passed, but to the alien it felt like days. Every second was stretched by the fear of discovery, the weight of shame, and the mystery of why this human continued to risk his life. He thought again about the soldiers who had abandoned him, their faces cold and empty, their steps fading into smoke. Then he looked at the human carrying him, the dirt covering his skin, the blood seeping into his armor, and he saw a different kind of strength. Not the strength of numbers, not the strength of weapons, but the strength of spirit. Finally, they reached a moment of pause, a narrow shelter formed by fallen steel. The soldier lowered the alien carefully onto the ground and sat down beside him, his shoulders rising and falling with exhaustion. His hands were blistered, his face pale, yet his eyes were steady as ever. The alien stared at him for a long time before speaking. "Why do you do this?" he asked again, his voice rough with doubt. "Why risk everything for me, when even my own kind would not?" The soldier leaned back against the steel, looking up at the sky where faint stars flickered through the smoke. His answer came slowly, not with anger, not with pride, but with quiet certainty. "Because leaving someone behind is not who I am. If I can carry you, I will. If I can fight for you, I will. That is enough reason." The alien warrior lay in silence, his heart torn between shame and something new, something unfamiliar. It was not pity, not mercy. It was respect, born not from words but from actions. In that dark, dangerous journey, carried through smoke and ruin, the paralyzed alien realized that this human was teaching him a lesson that his own people had long forgotten. And with that realization, a fire began to burn in him again. A fire that whispered that his story was not over. Not yet. The night stretched long as the human soldier carried the paralyzed alien warrior through the ruins. But finally the smoke began to thin, and the horizon showed faint signs of light. The battlefield was still dangerous, but the silence between them was now filled with something heavier than fear. The alien was beginning to accept that this human was different, that he carried not just his body but his honor as well. Yet deep inside, doubt still whispered, reminding him of the faces of his own people turning away. He wondered if he would ever see them again, and if so, what they would say when they saw him alive, saved not by their loyalty but by a human stranger. That question was answered sooner than he expected. As the soldier turned a corner into the broken remains of what had once been a supply station, figures appeared ahead. Shadows moved between twisted steel and shattered walls. The human raised his rifle in reflex, but as the smoke cleared, he recognized the armor of the alien warrior's comrades, the very same soldiers who had left him behind. They froze when they saw him carried across the human's shoulders, their eyes widening with shock. For a moment there was silence, the kind that presses down on the chest like a weight. Then whispers spread through the group, voices filled with disbelief and scorn. "You should not be alive," one of them muttered, his face twisting with something between guilt and anger. Another sneered, his words sharp and cruel. So this is what has become of our great champion? Carried like a child by a human? Laughter followed, cold and bitter. Not the laughter of friends but of men who wanted to bury their shame beneath cruelty. The paralyzed warrior clenched his fists, his heart burning with humiliation. These were the men he had fought beside, the ones who had once sung his victories. He wanted to scream at them, to remind them of every life he had saved, every battle he had won. But his voice caught in his throat. The shame of being carried, of being broken, silenced him. The human soldier did not flinch. He adjusted his grip on the alien's weight and faced the group with calm, unshaken eyes. He is still a warrior, he said firmly. He still has value. You left him to die, but I will not. The alien squad erupted in anger at his words. Some shouted that he had no right to speak, that he was only a human and had no place in their war. Others spat on the ground, calling their fallen comrade a burden unworthy of saving. The leader of the squad stepped forward, his face dark with contempt. You are a fool, he hissed at the soldier. Do you think your pity makes you strong? It makes you weak. This one was finished. By carrying him, you drag yourself into the grave with him. The paralyzed warrior closed his eyes, his heart sinking deeper. Each word felt like a blade cutting into him, not because they were true, but because they came from the very men he had once trusted. He wished for the strength to stand, to prove them wrong, but his body betrayed him. He was trapped in silence while their voices poisoned the air. Then the sound of engines broke through the argument. The sky lit with red as enemy patrol ships swept low, their searchlights scanning the ruins. The squad panicked. Some scattered into the shadows, others raised their weapons, firing blindly into the night. The human soldier dropped to one knee, shielding the alien with his body as the air filled with the crack of gunfire and the whine of energy blasts. Sparks rained down as steel beams shattered, and the ground trembled under the explosions. The alien squad, who had spoken so proudly of survival, broke their ranks almost immediately. They shouted orders, but fear controlled their steps. One by one, they turned their backs again, fleeing into the ruins and leaving the battlefield behind them. Their voices faded, their boots pounded away, until only the human and the paralyzed alien remained in the chaos. The soldier's rifle blazed, each shot precise and steady. He moved with practiced focus, shifting his body to shield the alien as he returned fire. Enemy drones burst into flames one by one, their wreckage crashing into the dirt, but more swarmed in the air. The soldier gritted his teeth, sweat pouring down his face, but his hands did not shake. He fought as if the weight on his shoulders was not a burden but a reason to stand firm. The alien warrior, lying helpless beneath him, watched with wide eyes. The shame of his comrade's betrayal was replaced by something new, something fierce. This human, whom they had mocked as weak, was standing alone against overwhelming odds, fighting not for himself but for a broken alien who had nothing left to give. The alien felt his chest tighten, his breath growing sharp as emotion rose in him. For the first time since the explosion, he did not feel like a burden. He felt like someone worth protecting, someone worth dying for. The battle raged, and when the last drone fell burning to the ground, the soldier lowered his rifle, his body shaking with exhaustion. He looked at the alien warrior, his face streaked with dirt and blood, and managed a faint smile. "Still with me?" he asked softly. The alien swallowed hard, his voice low but steady. "Yes, and I swear, I will not forget this." The soldier nodded once, then hoisted him back over his shoulders. The ruins were quiet again, except for the crackling of small fires and the distant thunder of retreating patrols. The alien glanced back into the smoke where his comrades had disappeared. There was no grief in him anymore, no longing for their return, only cold truth. They had abandoned him twice, but the human, this stranger, had stayed. And in that moment, the warrior knew where his loyalty now belonged. The battlefield was quiet again after the fight, but the silence no longer felt like the silence of despair. It was the silence that follows survival, the kind of silence that holds both exhaustion and triumph. The human soldier stood in the middle of the wreckage, his chest heaving as he tried to catch his breath. His hands were blistered from gripping his rifle, and his body trembled from carrying the heavy weight across endless ruins, but his eyes still burned with determination. Across his shoulders, the paralyzed alien warrior could feel the steady beat of the man's heart, like the rhythm of a drum that refused to stop no matter how heavy the burden became. Slowly, the soldier moved forward again, his boots crunching over broken stone and shattered steel. The dawn light finally broke across the horizon, painting the battlefield with shades of gold and red. The smoke still lingered, but the rising sun pierced through it, giving the land a strange, almost holy glow. To the alien warrior, who had believed his story was already over, it felt like a sign. A reminder that endings are never written until the last breath is taken. He had been left in the dirt to die, but he was alive. He had been forgotten by his own people, but he was remembered by a human. And because of that, he still had a story to tell. After what felt like hours of walking, the soldier finally reached the edges of the battlefield where a handful of survivors had gathered. Some were human soldiers, battered and bloodied, while others were from different alien clans who had managed to escape. They all turned when they saw him approach. Their eyes widened as they watched the human carrying the once mighty alien warrior across his shoulders, his armor cracked and his body broken, yet his presence undeniable. Murmurs spread through the group, some shocked, some whispering in disbelief. The soldier lowered the alien carefully onto a piece of broken stone and knelt beside him. His hands were shaking now from exhaustion, but he did not complain. He simply pulled out his canteen again and pressed it into the alien's hands. The warrior drank slowly, staring at the human with eyes that were no longer filled with bitterness or shame, but with something far deeper, respect. He had been ready to die in despair, but this man had carried him back into the light, step by painful step, without asking for anything in return. The silence of the watching crowd was broken when one of the alien survivors stepped forward. His voice carried disbelief as he spoke. "That is their champion, the one who was abandoned. How is he alive? Who saved him?" The alien warrior straightened as much as his broken body allowed and spoke, his voice rough but strong enough to be heard. "It was not my people. They left me. It was this human who carried me. When all others walked away, he stood." The words echoed through the survivors like thunder. Faces turned toward the human soldier, some with awe, others with shame. Among alien races, leaving a comrade behind was a stain, a shadow on honor that could never be erased. Yet here was proof that a human, considered weaker and less important by many, had shown greater loyalty and strength than warriors twice his size. The paralyzed alien's voice grew stronger as he continued, each word heavy with conviction. "I was once proud of my strength, proud of the battles I had won. But when I was broken, my people saw me as nothing. This man, this human, saw me as a warrior still. He carried me when I could not move. He fought for me when others fled. He risked his life for me when even my brothers would not. And because of him, I am alive. Because of him, my honor is not lost." The crowd was silent, hanging on his every word. The alien looked at the human beside him, his face set with exhaustion but his spirit unbroken, and then raised his voice one last time. "This man is not only a soldier. He is my brother in arms. He is the proof that humanity's courage is greater than strength, greater than weapons, greater than fear. If I cannot walk, then let the world know that he carried me. If I cannot fight, then let the world know that he fought for me. Let this be remembered. I was not saved by my people. I was saved by a human." The words struck deep, and for the first time since the war began, the survivors saw humanity in a new light. They saw not weakness but courage, not fragility but endurance, not pity but loyalty that refused to break. The human soldier did not raise his fist in victory, did not demand recognition or praise. He only sat quietly beside the alien, his eyes fixed on the horizon, as if already preparing himself for the next challenge. But the alien warrior knew the truth. He had been left to die in the dirt. His story meant to end in silence. Instead, his story had been reborn, carried on the back of a human who refused to walk away. In that moment, a legend was born, not just of a soldier or a warrior, but of two lives bound together by honor, forged in the fire of betrayal, and carried into the future by the unyielding spirit of humanity. And though his body was broken, the alien felt something stronger than muscles or weapons rise within him. He felt pride again, not in himself, but in the man who had saved him, and in the bond they now shared. The battlefield would remember his fall, but history would remember their stand.